Hi everyone, it's Heidi from flutterbyheidi.co.uk. I'm Heidi Smith, I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in the United Kingdom, and today I'm working with some new paper, which is the limited availability Waves of the Ocean designer series paper, only available until the end of end of April this year, 2022, but it's beautiful acrylic photographs of acrylic paints which give this beautiful water effect, and you get 2 sheets each of 6 designs, and these are the ones here. And as you can see, you've got some really deep colours on the one side, which is the acrylic pour, and then you've got some more muted ones on the reverse with lovely colours. You can see there's Pacific Point and Granny Apple Green, Bermuda Bay, and then you've got some lovely coral, Calypso Coral and Blushing Bride, a bit of Daffodil Delight in there as well. So I love the papers, and I thought it went really well with the Friends Like Seashells stamp set as well, sort of kind of sea themed, especially with these kind of green sort of colours as well. So I thought I would have fun. It's a card I've been meaning to make for a while. So it's got a little belly band. It's a gatefold card, but when you open it up inside, I've just added a little origami napkin fold centerpiece to add a bit of interest on the inside. So that's the card I'm going to make. As you can see, the Friends Like Seashells is a fabulous set because actually what it has in it is a coordinating embossing folder to give that texture to those shells, which hopefully you can see. So you get this one big die which cuts out one of these shapes, and these, and then you put that through an embossing folder, and obviously you can use the embossing folder without this. You just pop that in afterwards, after you've cut it and stamped it, and then when you run that through you get beautiful 3D shells and the lovely textured pieces that I've got on the front there, on those front panels, sort of with all the stuff, seaweed and things. So yeah, that's what we're going to make. The other things I've used on that are some new beautiful shapes dies. These ones here, I've used the hexagons from the front. You can see we've got some lovely panels here, and this large circle has an embossed layer in it as well. Great fun, and these sort of pebble shapes as well. So again, you could use any of those really to add some texture to your projects. So the first thing I'm going to do then is stamp this image. What I thought I'd do is I'm going to use the Waves of the Ocean. I'm going to use this DSP here, which is again sort of a lovely almost a pool party, but I'm going to add it on top of the Bermuda Bay, which I think so picks that colour up really well. But I'm going to use Pacific Point as the base to kind of bring out that beautiful blue that we've got. So I have already cut some of the pieces, and I'll go through the measurements as we use those. I have got a couple of pieces I still need to cut as well. So that's my piece for the centre. I need to cut a piece of basic white as well. So I'll do that in a moment. Let's do some stamping. Now this is a photopolymer stamp set. So as I always recommend with photopolymer, you use your stamping pierce mat, and that way it actually adds the cushioning on in effect. And I'm just going to use Bermuda Bay again, just because I love the colour, one of my favourite sort of colours. So being photopolymer, just ink it up, and then you're going to just add that to hover over and get it as central as you can. Yeah, not bad for me. It's really difficult to kind of get it when you're doing it on camera, because usually I'd stand right over it. So hopefully you'll get this fairly well centred. I've done a rubbish job on that one. There we go. And then the shell. And then there is the little shell as well, but I haven't actually popped that up on the so I'm just going to leave that as it is. So that's what we're going to put through the embossing folder. So when we pop it into our embossing folder, I do find that a tiny bit of post-it note just helps keep it from shifting. and I literally mean just a couple of tiny pieces. And I'm putting it on the dark background there. I find it easiest to kind of keep those fronds kind of aligned at the top, and then do the same at the bottom. And then say just add a couple of tiny bits of tape just to pop that through. Then pop that through. It's a 3D embossing folder, so as a result it does need a little bit more care with your layers. So just make sure that when you set it up, you pop it through your machine with the right layer so that it doesn't force it. It's a bit thicker than the others. If you've got a Stampin' Cut and Emboss, just follow the layers that are written on that base plate. And then when it comes out, hopefully you can see there, we've got a lovely embossed shells. I'm also going to die cut some of my beautiful shapes, and the ones I've used are these two here. So that I've used the larger one in my Bermuda Bay and the smaller one in some basic white. And just, you know, I tend to keep sort of pieces of card to sort of hand and just pop those through. In fact, what I'll do is I'll cut my layers. I'm going to cut my layers for the inside. It's at just sort of 6 centimetres, and that will give me, while I've got my board out, by 9.5. So these are the layers to go onto the Coastal Cabana. There we go. And then I shall just use a scrap bit of basic white that I've got to pop through and do that bit of die cutting. So as I said, use the smaller one is our basic white, and that will just you know, give us a nice piece to stamp onto. And then the larger one gives that border. Now if you wanted a narrower border, I have hand cut these before now, so just put the white on top of a piece of Coastal Cabana and hand cut it. Otherwise, obviously, just we can just, you know, just to have that slightly larger border. You see here that's kind of a slightly bigger border than I usually use, but you know, it's quite nice sometimes to add a bit of definition to it as well. There we go. I have to actually come off slightly the edge and just check that one. I used a scrap and it. Okay, it still works, that's fine. Okay. Right. So, let's do some more, we've got our mat out. Let's do some more stamping. So, what I want to do is I want to stamp the sentiment for the front, rather the background stamping for the front. I want to stamp these inner 2 panels, and I also want to stamp that centre diamond shaped pattern as well. Now I'm going to, because I need to come off the edge of my stamps, I'm actually going to put a scrap of my basic white on top of my piercing mat, so that I don't then don't create any issues for my stamping pierce mat ending up covered in ink, which wouldn't be the first time. So I'm just going to do some. I'm going to add the seashell to this one, and the kind of sand sprinkle at the bottom. And again, I'm going to come in with this lovely shell image. Put one at the top as well, and then for the front there, for our sentiment, I'm going to use my, again, happy birthday to my beautiful friend, and it's just remembering the orientation of this, so it's up to you whether you want it to go which orientation. I'm going to have it with the flat line. That's simply because it makes it easier for me to I'm not stamping that bit, this one I'm going to stamp the centre panel. So I'm just using the line the points up on my paper, grid paper, and then stamping diagonally across there. And again, just grabbing that lovely sort of sprinkle to add a bit of interest onto there as well. And again, you can come in with one of the shells, just create a sort of hint of a little bit of a border as well, but leave yourself some space if you want to add something extra in there, or you can just have that as a decorative panel on the inside of that card. Okay, so that's my decorative panel for the inside. My panel for the front, I'm just going to, that one I just, you could stamp either with the sprinkle image, or you could actually use one of the shell images. All we're trying to do is just create a bit of texture, so that when we add our shell on, it just gives a little more. There we go. So that's going to have our shell. Those are our panels for each side, and then we've got our central panel. So this is 14 by 10 centimetres, and what I've done on this one, if you look, is I've stamped a couple of images just in the background, again just to create a little bit more interest onto our background. And why not use these lovely images while we've got them out? So I've got my lovely sand dollar image here. And again, we can come in and use this sort of sprinkle. So I just popped a couple of sand dollar images in each corner. And then just a little bit of texture. This stamp is a great way to just add a little bit of a border to your cards, and because it's kind of got shaped edges, you can just fit that around your card. Okay. So I think those are all the panels that we want. I'll put all the measurements for these panels onto my blog as usual, and I've started putting them in the description box below the video, so if you want to see the dimensions, they'll be on there as well for you. Okay, so next bit then. Okay, now we're there. Right, next bit is to actually create our card and our insert. So for our card, what I've got is a piece of Pacific Point in this case, which is 10.5 by 29 centimetres. And you want to score this at, she says, get my template out. Just worth me sharing, I think, here how what I do. So you can see here, what I actually do is I use retired cardstock and I create myself a template for my fun folds. Then I store that in a folder, and then whenever I want to do the fun folder, just grab out the relevant card, and all the measurements are on there already. So this is 29 by 10.5, and you're going to make the first score at 7 centimetres, at 7.5. at 21.5, at 22, and that's all of it done. And that gives that sort of enough depth for you to have that pop out in the middle there. It's almost like a mini album in its own right. So that's our card base. We've got a belly band, and for that you need two pieces. These are both 3 centimetres wide. You need a piece that's 14 centimetres in length and a piece that's 29.7, and you're just going to score that one at 6, 6.5, then 20.7, so I'm just adding an extra couple of millimetres onto that, 20.7, 21.2, and that's going to fold around, and then we're going to add our piece onto the front of it, and and that, although I haven't put any extra depth on it, I put an extra couple of millimetres on that, and you'll see that barely touches, and that's where we're going to use our panel to go across the front of that. Now what we need to do now is create our pop out. So this is a piece that's 14 by 14 centimetres, and you're just going to score on all 4 sides at 3.5 centimetres. And I'm just doing that on the right hand side of my trimmer. Then you want to mark top and bottom at 7 centimetres. I'm using an erasable pen, so hopefully you can see that mark that I'm making. Because you're then going to score the diagonal. So I'm just going to line up those 2 little marks on each side and score my diagonal, and do that 4 times. So just turn it. Oh, and while you're doing this as well, you probably can't see them, but that you can do your corner diagonals as well. So we're lining up the 2 tick marks and doing the diagonal, and then you're doing the diagonal where those 3.5 centimetre score lines are. So if I just put a little mark just to show you there, it's easier for me to see probably than it is for you. So just line those up again with the, and what I'm doing is lining up with the groove on the track. And if you struggle to see them yourself, either mark them with a pencil or a pen, or you can obviously crease them as well. That sometimes helps, just to show you where they are again. And that was the first one where I didn't do my my small diagonal score. So I'm just going to do that now. Right. And then once you've done that, I'm just going to fold, and I'm with DSP, I just reinforce with my fingers rather than with my bone folder. And again, with scoring on DSP, just make sure you do it with a light sort of touch. I mean, Stampin' Up DSP is a good weight, but you just want to make sure that you're not scoring through. Now, you need to decide which colour you want on the outside, which on the inside. So I think I'm probably going to have the lighter colour on the inside. So I'm just first of all scoring those, reinforcing those score lines before folding them back in on themselves, because you want those creases to come in as a point. That makes sense. So those sides, once you've done that, those should fold up quite nicely, and just reinforce as they come in like so. And those just fold back on themselves, and to give that lovely sort of fun effect. And that's just ready for our panel. And on this panel, so this, I'll give you the measurements in inches on. I haven't given them in inches so far. So this is 6.5 by 6.5 centimetres, and you're just going to put that into the centre of the card, like so. And what I would recommend on this is that you just mark the midpoint at 7 centimetres, because that will just help with lining up our origami napkin fold. So when you add that, I still partially fold it and add glue to the reverse, and then you're just going to squash that in, then you can line that up like so. So pop that to one side to dry, and then we can get on with the rest of our card. So with this, now you want to actually get your bone folder out and make sure that that's well, these are reinforced well. and then we can add our panels. As I said, the basic white panels are 6 by 9.5 centimetres. So our Coastal Cabana are 10 by 6.5. That just gives that ½ centimetre border. You could go narrower if you wanted to. Obviously, some people prefer that narrower border. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends how I'm feeling, I suppose. And sometimes it's whether I'm going to do this in a class or not. Obviously, I know my ladies, depending on how comfortable they are or otherwise with using millimetres or 1/8 of an inch as well. But as I say, this gives you two nice sort of panels really to add your message onto. I'm just going to come more into the corner there. Like so. So now that that's dry, we can add our panels to the front, and obviously I've gone for these sort of really deep blue colours. And actually, I've cut those a bit on the short side. So I'm going to cut myself a couple of panels to line those. I'd forgotten to do. So I'm just going to add the DSP onto 2 panels. So you could either use as one of 2 things. What I did was I actually added an extra panel onto the inside so I added a layer onto the inside of this one, which I didn't on my original one, hence I was suddenly short of some card. So you can either do as I've done initially, which is to just have your basic white layered straight onto the card, or you can do as I'm doing here, which is add an extra layer of cardstock. So if you're not going to add an extra layer on the inside, you want to make your basic white a little bit bigger, so you'll want that at 6.5 by 10, which is what I've cut the DSP to, the Coastal Cabana to. So just pop that on there. Do as I do and not as I say. Open your card out when you're adding your layers. It makes it much easier to get them centralised. And now we can add our centre panel. And all that remains is to do some fussy cutting and create our front panels. So I'm just going to grab my snips, and with these, if you just come around, you'll find the embossing, and you're just cutting that a little bit closer. To the shell. Like so. Just makes it easy just to follow around. So there's my sort of Nautilus shell for left hand side. I'm going to use this large shell that I did write down what it was across the centre of my panel. And then with this one, I'm actually keeping the sort of fronds of seaweed intact on this, apart from around this edge. So I'm sort of trimming around here and just trimming the seaweed away, just taking that bit of post-it note tape off the top there. She says I am taking it off. beauty of the post-it note tape rather than washi tape, I find, is that it does lift off really easily. And I'm just going to trim down here around that shell as well. And then I had an extra bit of seaweed here that I'm just going to sort of trim. Yep. So now we can add those onto these. Now what I did was I just popped some dimensionals onto the back there. Stampin' dimensionals are great for just adding that bit of lift to your card. And I'm just kind of putting one in. Sort of 3 on a piece this size is plenty. And I'm leaving sort of a space here, because once I've got that in, that's when I'm going to tuck my little bit of seaweed behind that. And I haven't trimmed my shell down. So again, you know, you can use this big decorative panel as a card front as it is, or as I'm doing, you can cut it apart and really have some fun with it. I'm just using a bit of Tombow on the back here, just some little dots, because it's not that they're big enough to take kind of pieces of you know, dots of glue. So I'm going to pop my shell in the corner and then pop this. You can just tuck it behind the edge. But because these are fairly big pieces of seaweed, it's easy enough to add a dab of glue rather than having to use a fine tip glue or to use a piece of sponge. This one I'm just going to glue completely flat onto there. So again, just some Tombow, and the Tombow obviously being it has enough sort of dimension to be able to adhere this embossed layer down. And I'm just coming to the tips there because you don't want those catching. I've possibly gone a little bit large just on that dab there. So if ever you do that, just grab a spare bit of card and just lift that excess off. If you think you've gone a bit mad, you can always add it somewhere else. And this is the piece that's going to go onto here, so I'm just going to add that. And I rather like when it comes off the side of the layers as well. Kind of adds almost a bit of movement to it. And again, if you get any glue that comes off the side, a little scrap of card, and then we can create our layer. And with this one I decided that it would work to have it would work to have the specific point as the belly band as around the card as some contrast, but then have that coastal cabana, because on this one it doesn't kind of stand out as much, blends into the background a little bit. So to join this up, all I'm literally doing is putting the tiniest little bit of adhesive on the end to overlap it, because it is only sort of a few millimetres, but it's just enough to kind of hold it in place before we add the layer across the top. So what do I mean by that? So once you've closed your card up, make sure it's just nice and joined in the middle, because you're going to wrap this around. In fact, on that it doesn't quite join, so what I'm going to do is lift off that little bit of glue, because I don't want that sticking to the front of our card. I'm going to then just attach my front piece. So add some seal onto the short edge, like so. Add my bar, my second piece, like so. And we're going to put our adhesive on the other end of this. And just keep the middle section clear. and don't do as I've done, which is to glue it down before you're ready. So don't do it too tight because you want a bit of movement, but just add that to the middle. Then we can add our panel, and if you add your adhesive just straight across the middle there, there's our layer. Go, what a bit of faffing about, but anyway, there we have our fun napkin fold inner card ready to gift. And all you do is just pop that, and when you put your belly band on, if you can see I'm just easing that on each side, and there we go. Thanks for watching. Do come back and see me again soon, and if you'd like to purchase any of the products you've seen, just pop to the description box below this video and you'll find links to all the products, or pop along to my blog post, and again the link to that is below this video. Thanks for watching, folks. Bye bye.